Hello and welcome to lesson 23, lecture 3, the final one for the week, where we are going to talk about Caesar's success in the civil war and his reforms in the city of Rome. So let me get my slides up. So as we have talked about Caesar's life before, he came from a patrician family, and then he rose through the ranks and then ultimately gained power by joining the mistakenly so-called First Triumvirate in the year 60. In 59, he became consul. Then after his conquest of Gaul, he faced a rather big crisis in terms of how to return to Rome and show that he is incredibly successful as a general. And so the conflict that we are talking about is Caesar's wish to return to Rome as a consul, which ultimately Pompey and a number of optimates in the Senate resisted. So the optimates would be those who are much more conservative, and they definitely are concerned that Caesar would be seeking individual powers in a way that would be just beyond competition. And I think Caesar was in a very tricky situation. And despite the ease with which Suetonius represents that he just crossed, whether with some doubts or not, that bridge and crossed the Rubicon, he in fact had to sort of figure out how exactly to do this sort of policy-wise and representation-wise. And I think one of the things that it is not that well known about Caesar, that he was an excellent letter writer. And so we do have some of his letters surviving. So for example, this one, where he wrote to a friend called Balbus in this year 49 BCE, where he said, "I had of my own accord decided to show all possible clemency and to do my best to reconcile Pompey. Let us try whether by this means we can win back the goodwill of all and enjoy a lasting victory, seeing that others have not managed by cruelty to escape hatred or to make their victories endure, except only Sulla, whom I do not propose to imitate. Let this be the new style of conquest, to make mercy and generosity our shield." So this was nevertheless, it's hard to know what's true, but this policy of clemency did not stop him from crossing the Rubicon. And what ensued, so here we are in northern Italy, where he is crossing this tiny stream, Rubicon, upon his return from Gaul. And Pompey essentially is scrambling because Caesar has with him one legion of his soldiers who fought with him in Gaul and who are incredibly loyal to him and who are very ready to fight. That's what they have been practicing for a whole decade. So Pompey recruits some soldiers, but he's really worried about facing Caesar in a battle. So they all essentially run through Italy, north to south. And then Pompey takes all the boats in southern Italy and escapes to Greece. So Pompey is shown here in this purple line, right? So he goes from Rome to the south and then to Greece, and we will see eventually to Egypt. Caesar at that point has a problem. He is right here in southern Italy, and he is unable to get any boats to get enough soldiers over to Greece to beat Pompey. So he does something quite interesting, sort of Hannibal but backwards, which is that he marches north in Italy and then all the way over here to Spain, where Pompey has quite a few supporters, and he beats them in a battle there. And then he comes back, and now he's able to get some boats, and he is going to be able to go and chase Pompey down in Greece right here, where in the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BCE, in blue, Caesar with his legions here in the middle, and with the cavalry on the side, again infantry in the middle on Pompey's side, and he is cavalry up here. Caesar successfully pushes back against Pompey's cavalry, and then his troops are able to attack Pompey's troops from the side, and he successfully beats them. Pompey is barely able to escape, but essentially this is a big defeat that allows a lot of the senators to recognize that Caesar is becoming quite unstoppable. At that point, it's a matter of principle. So, for example, we see that some of those individuals who escaped the Battle of Pharsalus after they were defeated by Caesar, some of them will go to Africa, some of them will go to Spain, while Pompey himself, after he loses again here in the Battle of Pharsalus, will flee to Alexandria, where he will be promptly killed by the locals, who are actually finding themselves in the midst of a civil war themselves. This civil war is between Ptolemy the 13th and Cleopatra the 7th. Don't worry too much. Many Egyptian kings are called Ptolemy, and many queens are called Cleopatra. And the cruelest question I remember that I worried about when I was up for my doctoral exams was that they would ask me about, a particular one that I may not be able to remember. But this civil war is important because it will be Ptolemy the 13th who kills Pompey with the hope that that would make him sort of a favorite of Caesar. Caesar actually does not want this Egyptian king killing his former ally, and so he chooses the side of Cleopatra. And this is a very big historical moment in some way that people have long fantasized for. And if you have lots of time on your hand, which you might, you can watch a movie in which Elizabeth Taylor plays Cleopatra, and it's this incredible, memorable performance of, an incredibly beautiful and smart woman in the ancient world. And I think that it's interesting to see a coin of Cleopatra that survives, because I think I really can say I am not sure, if I would like to assess her beauty. But what I would say is that she is someone who will definitely be able to forge a relationship with Caesar that will be far from just political. In fact, the two of them will have a huge victory celebration down on the Nile. And after the city of Alexandria is burned, which, by the way, has terrible consequences in terms of classics in this fight, the two of them again go off on this boat trip down on the Nile. And the outcome of this is well shown in this little cartoon. We are pretty certain that Cleopatra gave birth to a child of Caesar called Caesarion. Unfortunately, that child did not survive much past Caesar. Obviously, that would have been a huge deal. And one way of maybe thinking about it is that, of course, Caesar has a wife in Rome, but given that with Cleopatra, this is not a marriage, the child is not considered legitimate, and this is not really considered cheating quite the same way as it would be today. But to follow on with Caesar, so here he is in Alexandria, and then he turns up north and conquers and conquers and conquers and conquers. In particular, in the year 47, he faces off with the kingdom of Pontus at the Battle of Zela in 47 BCE. And there he faces off with Pharnaces, who is a son of Mithridates VI. The most important thing I would like you to remember from this battle is that this is the famous one, Bene Vidi Vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Coin gets issued, and this is what he will claim fame for, that he beat him so fast that it was just very, very speedy, which was also a phrase that belittled Pompey's successes against him. So here he goes to Zela here in modern day Turkey, and then upon his return, he has some more conquests, including beating a senatorial army that actually has some Roman senators in it at Thapsus, rather famously including a figure called Cato the Younger, who was a very important figure of resistance. And if you have a chance to look at the handout where I give you a bit of details here, this is where Cato famously committed suicide after their loss. The importance of that event is that it will become sort of an exemplary suicide for later Romans who find oppression by emperors unbearable. At any rate, Caesar's goal is, of course, to return to Rome, and that's what he does, and he celebrates those triumphs in Rome in 45. And if you have time, HBO's Rome series has, I think, in season 1, episode 10, a very interesting depiction of his Gallic triumph, which just gives you a nice visual of this event. To finish up, Caesar has a number of reforms in Rome in the years 45, 44. But before we can just talk about those, I also wanted to talk about his extraordinary powers. So we have discussed that in 59 BCE, he was consul. This is the mistakenly so-called first triumvirate. But then he was consul again in 48, then in 46 to 44. In 49, he was dictator for a few days, 47, dictator again, in 46, dictator for 10 years. And I think he is really trying to figure out some kind of constitutional way to maintain power beyond the limits imposed by just being a consul or anything limited in such way. Interestingly and importantly, he also has what Suetonius called extravagant honors. The superintendent of manners, or father of the fatherland. Father of the fatherland is maybe less unusual. That's something that Cicero also got after the Catiline conspiracy. He had the month of July renamed after him. And I think that what everybody was sort of thinking about is he becoming a king. And so in February 44 BCE, there is a large celebration when one of his associates, Mark Antony, not the singer, was offering him essentially a crown. And they do this in an incredibly public scene. And the way our sources describe this event is that Mark Antony offers Caesar a crown and puts it above his head, and the crowd is like, what? And so Mark Antony removes it, and then people clap when he removes it, and then again he moves it towards Caesar's head, and then again a crowd is like, oh no, boo, we don't want that. And then he removes the crown again, and so Caesar essentially performs the rejection of the title of king and the ritual crown. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that in other ways he is not enjoying extraordinary powers. And rather importantly, these include hugely symbolic powers. So lots of statues of him in the streets of Rome. He's allowed to wear a purple toga, which is unusual to have a fully purple toga. And he, most importantly, got some cultic honors where he essentially was worshipped almost like a god in his lifetime. And the last bit of this is that he also instituted a number of reforms in Rome that served to sort of establish him as this unusually powerful singular leader, which would allow us potentially to consider him the first emperor. We can think of Pompey as the first emperor. We can think of Caesar, or maybe Caesar's heir. Those are all options, and we will discuss later which one of those three might be the most appropriate. And so resolution of debt crisis, settlement of veterans are all aspects of his attention to a range of political matters on people's mind. And this included also the regulation of the grain dole. And what that meant is that he tried to establish a number of people who will get free food in Rome every year. And he enlarged the Roman Senate, obviously, to enter some new members who were his allies, and reformed the calendar and issued coins with his likeness. And so far, we have seen Romans issue coins, but never with a living person on it. And now we see for the first time a person on a coin who is still alive. And so we essentially, by the year 44, reaching a moment when he has unlimited political power. And so even though he refuses that diadem, the crown, the ritual crown, he in fact seems to have unlimited power. All that will stop on the Ides of March, which is where we will pick up the story. That's all for lesson 23. Thank you.